Hello everyone, welcome to Unit 5, Social Interaction, Groups, and Social Structure. Please follow along in Chapter 5 in your textbook. So what we will learn in this video, we will define social structure, outline the main elements of social structures, discuss the role of formal organizations and bureaucracies in society, explain the impact of McDonaldization in modern society, and compare and contrast theoretical perspectives on social structure. So first, let's look at what is social structure. Social structure is the patterns of social behavior. And these patterns that are repeated over time. And these patterns are repeated across generations. They're interrelationships of parts of a social system. And there are four main elements of social structure: status, social script, groups, and social institutions. And we're going to look at each of these individually, starting with status. So status is a defined position within a social system that involves duties and privileges. We all maintain different statuses at the same time. For example, student, worker, partner. And these statuses can be master status, ascribed status, or an achieved status. A master status is a status that dominates all others. While we hold a number of different statuses in our lives, we generally also occupy a master status, and this is one that dominates all others. Our master status can shift over time and location. So, for example, while I'm here with you, my master status is that of a professor. When I'm out in the community, my master status is that of a volunteer. And when I'm at home, my master status is now mom, or sometimes to my children, bank machine. Ascribed status are advantages and disadvantages assigned at birth. For example, your gender. When you're born, your parents are told if you're a boy or a girl. That is ascribed. Racialization. Your age, whether you are 18, 25, or 60 years of age. And your social class, your socioeconomic status. Achieved are attributes that individuals gain throughout their lifetime based on effort. So, for example, it was an effort to get to college, to get those grades. Perhaps you aspire or achieve to be a police officer, and then perhaps the chief of police. Those are achieved statuses. Next, we're going to look at social scripts. A social script is the culturally constructed, socially enforced social practices that we're all expected to follow when we interact in social institutions. Those are social roles, role conflict, role strain, and role exit. These scripts constrain the way we relate to one another. They are built on norms, and violating them may result in negative sanctions like we talked about in Chapter 3. On any given day, you're likely to follow a number of different scripts. Social roles, for example, involve different social scripts. Right now, you are a student. You are also probably a best friend, perhaps an employee, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, perhaps a parent. Role conflict happens when their demands of two of your roles conflict. For example, when you are your friend's supervisor at work. Role strain happens when one of your statuses involves conflicting demands. For example, you want to look smart and get good grades, but you don't want to look like a know-it-all. And role exit is the process of disengaging from a role. For example, leaving your role as a student and identifying as a graduate and then a worker. And oftentimes, many of these happen at the same time, and it is a balance. Groups. A group is people with similar norms, values, and expectations who interact with one another. Examples of groups are primary, secondary, in-group, out-group, reference, and social network. So a primary group is a small, intimate group. For example, a family living in the same household. A secondary group could be a group that is like your sociology class, more formal and impersonal. In-group is a group in which you feel a sense of belonging, perhaps a team. An out-group is a group that we feel different from or don't feel we belong. For example, in Dr. Seuss's story of the Snitches, it's one of the best to illustrate in-group and out-group labeling in social interaction. Those with stars fancied themselves better than others and excluded those without stars from their social gatherings. Those without stars also had stereotypes about those without. This led to discrimination, name-calling, and social shunning. We're actually going to look at the Snitches in part 2 of chapter 5. A reference group is a group that we use as a standard for our behavior. So examples of groups is a coalition. A coalition is formed when groups work together towards a common goal. For example, the Ontario Health Coalition. Social networks, we belong to many different groups. We make connections to people in different social circles through these groups. This could be a team. It could be a group of friends that you hang out with every Friday. It could be a study group. We also have virtual networks. Social media allows us to create virtual social networks. Perhaps you play online games with people you've never met. In elementary school, children in the same class tend to interact with one another during and after school. And once high school begins, however, specific groups tend to form, and students sort themselves based on similar interests. The group that you identify with is referred to as your in-group, while other groups are your out-groups. I'm going to show a short clip on social interaction, 6 degrees of separation. You can say what you think about 6 degrees of separation. And at the end, think about whether we're all connected by 6 people, by 12 people, or perhaps by 3 people.
6 degrees of separation. The theory that everyone and everything is 6 or fewer degrees or steps away from each other. You might be familiar with Stanley Milgram, a social psychologist best known for his experiments on obedience at Yale, which involved delivering electric shocks in a so-called memory test with increasing intensities. In 1967, Milgram coined the phrase 6 degrees of separation after conducting his small world experiment, describing that growing social networks had a world-shrinking effect. The experiment tested how many steps it took for a package to be delivered from the West Coast in the US to a stockbroker in Boston by having one acquaintance mail it to another. He found that it only took an average of 6 steps to reach Boston in the 1960s. But what about now, in the 21st century, where social networking sites dominate the internet? If you use LinkedIn or Facebook, you've seen the 6 degrees of separation at work. LinkedIn uses a connection system where individual profiles in the People You May Know section are labeled as second or third connections, with a map showing how that person is related to you through your first connections, who are acquaintances already on your friends list. Similarly, Facebook shows a mutual friends count and now has a function that enables you to message friends of friends, if enough shared contacts exist. It used to be that we were all just 6 degrees of separation apart, connecting anyone to anyone else via finding a friend who knew someone else, who knew someone else, and so on. But research conducted by Facebook and the University of Milan in 2011 shows that the number of degrees is now as small as 4. 721 million active users and 69 billion friendships were analyzed for 1 month, and the results were as follows. 99.6% of all pairs of users are connected by paths within 5 degrees. 92 are connected by only 4 degrees. The average distance between all people on Facebook in 2008 was 5.28 degrees, and in 2011 it lowered to 4.74. Who knows what the number would be now? It's a small, small world.
So what do you think? Is it 6 degrees of separation? Is it more or is it less? Social institutions are behavioral and relationship patterns that are persistent, interlinked, and function across societies. They're the large institutions: economy, family, government, media, healthcare. So what are social institutions? Social institutions are persistent behavioral and relationship patterns in society. They regulate people's behavior, they're interlinked, and function across society. Examples are family, schools, government, healthcare. Organizations are large secondary groups that have a collective goal. Formal organizations are deliberately planned groups that coordinate people, capital, tools, and roles to achieve a specific set of goals. This coordination usually involves a hierarchy, for example, government or a multinational corporation. Then we have bureaucracies. Bureaucracies are formal organizations that thrive in both the private and public sector. They're common in many modern societies and created to be efficient and effective in their operation. So Max Weber has an ideal typical bureaucracy which consists of 6 characteristics. We're going to use the example of a restaurant to explain the 6 characteristics of the ideal typical bureaucracy. Division of labor. Within a bureaucracy, everyone has a specific task. This division is created to produce maximum efficiency. So in a restaurant example, we have the person who meets you at the door, who reports to a server, who may report to a sous chef or a head bartender, or perhaps the sous chef is the assistant manager. With that, there's a hierarchy of authority. Positions are ranked in a hierarchical fashion. The system sets out a defined reporting structure. So if you work at the front of the house with customers, you may report to the manager or the assistant manager. And if you work at the back of the house, you may report to a chef or a sous chef. Written rules and regulations. Rules are clear and concise. Rules provide clear guidelines and expectations for role performance. For example, being on time, making sure you call in if you are sick, and making sure your uniform is tidy. Written documents or rules and policies are available in writing. This makes rule enforcement more efficient. Impersonality. So impersonality, our roles are carried out without personal consideration to ensure equal treatment. There's no favoritism, no nepotism. People advance on their merit. Positions are filled based on qualifications and merit, and written documents outline what is necessary to achieve a promotion within the organization. Looking at bureaucracy and how organizations work, watch the video now or click on the next slide in the PowerPoint to watch the McDonaldization theory of George Ritzer.
In 1993, George Ritzer published his book titled The McDonaldization of Society. The term McDonaldization refers to the business model adopted by McDonald's in the fast food industry that focuses on the 4 main elements of efficiency, predictability, calculability, and control. These are said to be the most rational forms of running a business and operating within a capitalist system. With rationality, we replace traditional rules with logical and consistent ones. Let's take these 4 elements and apply them to your experience at a fast food restaurant. What is efficiency? You know you desire something to be efficient if you have ever complained at a fast food restaurant because your food was taking too long. Well, what is too long? 1 minute? 5 minutes? With efficiency, we expect to order an item and have it available right away. Efficiency also puts more expectation on the customer to do things for themselves, such as get their own beverage or condiments. This is convenient for both the customer and the business. The second element is predictability. We love what is familiar. And just like the McDonald's where you live, you expect a McDonald's in another city or country to have either the same menu items and atmosphere, or at least something close to it. Third is the idea of calculability. Let's face it, you don't go to McDonald's because you believe it is the best quality food. Well, why do you go? In addition to knowing what you will get and getting it quickly, you know you will get a lot of food for a small price. So in other words, we go for quantity over quality. Last, we have control. And primarily it's control through non-human technology. Technology ensures that our food is cooked and prepared the same way each time. This aids in de-skilling humans and turns them into employees that can be easily replaced. But McDonaldization is not just limited to the fast food industry. Today we see it everywhere from restaurants to banking systems to higher education. How have colleges and universities turned into places of McDonaldization? If you think about it, they focus on efficiency when you take a multiple choice test on a computer, which automatically grades your test when you're done and then enters it automatically into an online grade book, which you can then check anytime, day or night. Predictability happens when we expect one professor to teach the same way and use similar teaching styles. Calculability shows up when what we produce in the classroom and what can be measured is the primary focus. You know this is true when what matters most to you is the grade you receive in the class or your GPA. Is this more important than the process of learning? Can all learning be quantifiable? And what about control? Standardized tests and an institution's rules and regulations on how and what is taught give a certain amount of control. And courses that are developed and packaged to be taught by any professor anywhere and outline exactly what needs to be done each class period have a great deal of control. All of these elements impact the type of education you receive. So, is McDonaldization a good thing for colleges and universities? How does it affect the way you learn? Is McDonaldization even good for society? And perhaps more important is how will this affect our future?
So this concept created by George Ritzer, he argues that the principles used to create McDonald's have become central to the operation of many aspects of business and society. So efficiency, to find the best route to goals. Predictability, experiences are the same across places and time. Calculability, emphasize quantity over quality. And control, use non-human technology as much as possible. So in what areas of your life is this true? Certainly with the fast food industry. What else do you do in your life that has been McDonaldized for efficiency, predictability, calculability, and control? Coming up next is Unit 5, Part 2, Social Interaction, Groups and Social Structure, continuing on with Chapter 5 in your textbook.